Hey folks, welcome back. So it's time for a little bit more Halloween action, but before I start looking at Shiver RPG here, I just wanted to say that I'm sorry for not posting as much as I normally would for Halloween season, spooky season as they say, but basically I've had some health issues of late and it's put me off my normal editing schedule. I have several videos that I do plan to put up in November. However, I just need to build up my energy and health again so I can actually sit there for many hours and edit them all together and get rid of the mistakes and all that. So for this year, spooky season goes into November. So I guess that's a bonus, maybe? I don't know. I'll call it a bonus. But in any case, what we got here today is a bumper crop of stuff for the Shiver RPG from Parable Games. I got this from the fine folks at dungeonland.co.uk. I'm not affiliated or associated with them in any way. By the way, they're just a reliable store that I use quite a lot. And I recommend you check them out as they are RPG specialized. So they have an enormous amount of cool stuff, including indie games in stock. So if you're in the UK, good place to check out. So I picked up the core rulebook, the Shiver Gothic supplement, the Cursed Library Adventure pack here. There's 5 adventures, I believe. The director's screen, you can see on the bottom. And as you will note to my right here, this is a funky dice game. We've got funky dice. So there's 2 different types. There's the Archetype dice pack, which is for the base game, and the Monster dice pack, which is associated with the Gothic expansion. But what you have in this game are 2 types of dice. You have skill dice, which are these D6s with special symbols, and you have talent dice, which are these D8s. And as you see when we get into the game, you use both of those dice, depending on which skills or attributes you're using to try and perform an action. So we'll just take a quick look at the funky dice, since they're here. So the talent dice, as you can see, they've got different symbols. So the stars here are for successes. You can have a maximum of 2 successes. And then you have this purple eyeball, which is called the strange, this symbol. Each of the symbols on the skill dice also corresponds to a different thing, which we'll talk about in a minute. So these dice basically give you a significantly higher chance of either getting a lot of successes, or they give you some extra up to 2 points of the strange. Now, the thing about the strange is every time you get strange points, you need to fill them in on the doom clock, which is a sheet that the GM keeps. And as the doom clock fills up, every time you get to a quarter of the way around the clock, you introduce something nasty for your players. Maybe a plague of rats, or maybe the building that they're in, all the lights go out, or they hear screams from ghouls outside as they approach. Something nasty will happen as the strange points rack up. Now, the skill dice, they also have different symbols here. There's a different symbol on each side, in fact. So we have this clover for luck. We have the heart here. We have the strange, of course. We have intelligence. We have strength. It's equivalent. And we have this key here, which is, well, that might be wits, actually. And then I think we have intelligence for this one. So when you roll these, you're looking to match up symbols that match the action that you're trying to do, or the skill you're trying to use, rather. And the talent dice give you increased abilities to reach the number of successes that you need. And those successes are general because they are those star symbols, can be applied to any type of skill roll. They're not restricted to the particular attribute that you're rolling like the skill dice are. Now, we'll just quickly look at the monster ones, see if there's any actual difference. The more I look at these, the more I don't think there is, but they do look cool. So these you can see have a mottled red and white. Once again, we've got, well, the strange marker is different. It's got a skull. We do have the star-shaped success symbols. There's more doubles on there, maybe. So actually, it might be a little different. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see, maybe, when we look through the book. The skill dice, I believe, are basically the same, except the actual skill symbols are slightly different. So you can see the mind symbol is a little bit different. We have an Ankh here which I guess is going to be equivalent to heart, sort of. The strange, as we noted before, has a skull on it now. We have, oh no, it might still fist. Okay, so I guess this is going to be luck, dexterity equivalent. So yeah, a little bit different symbols. And also the dice have a nice translucent smoke effect in there. So I don't know how well it comes across on camera, but you can see that they're translucent with the black smoke effect going through them. So the monster dice are cool, and they do actually have different symbols. So that's useful to know, because what happens in Shiver Gothic is that besides the fact there's a 10-part campaign, you also have the ability to play as monsters. So for World of Darkness fans, that is the book you want to get. But for anything, before you start anything in Shiver, you need to get the core rulebook, of course, so we'll flip through that first. I will try to not waste your time as I typically do. There's a really good review of this game by Dave Thomavor Oh, came with a nice little bonus here. That's nice. Put that off to the side, which I'll link in the description, and that talks about how the game works and why it's cool. And it very much appeals to me because I'm a fan of horror games, and this game is more about constructing kind of horror media based storyline. So rather than globe spanning mythos hunting campaigns like you might have in Call of Cthulhu, here we're looking at horror movies, things like, Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, anything from slasher films to ghost stories, to Mike Flanagan films. All this kind of stuff can be replicated in this game, and it's designed to be very flexible. And we recently come out with 2 new supplements as well, which are called Blockbuster and Slasher. And Slasher allows you to have additional rules to have basically multiple generations of characters as they do as you get deeper into Jason movies or Freddy movies, where the next generation of people will be haunted by the same killer. And Blockbuster allows you to actually have a set of statistics that follow your actors' careers. So your player characters have a representation in the sort of metafiction of the movies that are happening and that you're setting up as your scenarios. And as they build up their presence in a given franchise, they will build up their screen legend as well. So here we have a list of the actual names of all these different attributes that it shows you on the dice. So Grit, that's your strength equivalent. Wit is your kind of stealth, picking locks, dexterity, thievery kind of stuff. Smarts is your intelligence related stuff. Heart is for persuasion, deception, and performance. Luck is adding random boost to all actions, and random luck is always on your side. So if you're somebody who uses the luck archetype, which is one of the kind of equivalent of classes in this game, then you'll be relying on luck to scrape you through a variety of situations. And then you have the strange, which is not only associated with counting up the doom clock, but is also used for magic, psychic powers, and other unnatural abilities. So they can be both dangerous because you're counting up the doom clock, but also quite powerful. Now we have the introduction to the different kinds of dice. So we have the 6-sided skill dice, as I mentioned, and the 8-sided talent dice. Making a skill check. So on each character sheet, you will have a representation of each attribute as written as such. So you'll have your core skill value, which is the number of skill dice you roll, and your talent value, which is the number of talent dice you roll. See how many core skill points your character has in the chosen core skill, and add that number of skill dice to your skill pool. Then for talent points, see how many talent points in the core skill your character has, and add that number of talent dice to the dice pool. So you build up your dice pool, and you're trying to get a number of successes from 1 to 5, typically. And it gives you, 1 is easy, 5 is nearly impossible. You also have a luck bank, so when you roll luck symbols, you can bank that die into your pool to use later. And also you have to check your fear status. So if you're in the different levels of fear, you'll have to subtract from your dice pool, and then you'll be able to roll after that to determine your number of successes, which should be greater than or equal to the challenge rating from 1 to 5 in order to pass. If you fail to roll the required number of symbols, then you can't complete the action you want to take, and you might incur a penalty for failure. And you also have to count up the strange symbols you've rolled when you fail and tick up the doom clock in that case. They also have an online dice roller, which is very, very handy for people like me who play quite a bit online. You can also do combined skill checks. This basically allows you to use multiple core skills to count as a success. So to give an example of deciphering a book, you might use smarts and strange, since both could be justified. So you select one of the core skills as the dice pool, but all core skills rolled from the combined skill check counts as successes. So for example, you could choose smarts as your primary one. If it was higher, roll that number of dice, but then successes that you get in strange would count as well. You can also have opposed skill checks. Basically, if one side has more of the desired symbol in a conflicting roll, then they will win the opposed skill check. If there's a draw, the director will ultimately decide the outcome. Luck and strange can be used as tiebreakers, or the director can ask for a reroll, or it could be that nobody wins and there's consequences for both sides, which is something I often do in Call of Cthulhu, actually. Enemies can trigger these contests through their abilities, but may be rolling something different to the players, so it's something to keep in mind. You won't always be rolling the same pool against another identical pool. Then you can assist skill checks, assisting in a combat encounter using an interact action. The player will describe how they want to help the other player, and then the director will decide how many dice the player can roll in assistance, adding to the main roll's result. They give examples of, if they give somebody a leg up over a fence, maybe they get a single die. If they sacrifice a precious artifact, maybe they get a talent die. So, there's a wide range of possibilities there. Then they give you a table to convert from regular D6s to the funky symbols. I don't think anybody's really going to use that. I mean, you could, but there's an online dice roller, and the funky dice are pretty readily available, at least over here. so not a big deal. And you've got your lifeline, so this is your hit points essentially, or wounds in this case. So each time you take damage in the form of wounds, you put an X in the boxes starting from the left. There are 3 different speeds that you can move: slow, average, and fast. Move distance of 20 feet, 30 feet, and 40 feet respectively. Everybody's starting speed is average, so 30 feet. But abilities and armor and other stuff can increase your speed, and speed can also be slowed down by wounds or by other effects, armor, etc. So they note that as you move along the wound track, you go through different states of problematic elements. Then we have armor, so you can wear armor to protect yourself. If you're wearing a piece of armor and hit by attack, roll a single skill die for each armor slot that's occupied. On a luck symbol, the damage taken from the attack is reduced by 1 and the armor remains undamaged. On a strange symbol, damage taken from the attack is reduced by 1 but your armor gains 1 wound. On any other symbol, there is no effect and the damage hits you as normal. Okay, that's interesting. Then we have different modes of play. So survivor mode, this gives you the option to be at death's door when you run out of health points. And then you have nightmare mode. So if you lose all 16 of your health points, then you just die permanently. And then additionally, you have these effects for each of these chunks of 4 wounds that you take. So if you're in the weakened state, you choose a core skill to temporarily reduce your points by 1. When you're limping, your legs give way beneath you and you reduce your speed to slow. If you're traumatized, level 3 of damage here, then you begin to lose motor skills. You can either choose a core skill in which you have a talent point and reduce it by 1, or choose an ability which you can no longer use whilst in this state. And finally, if you reach the end of the dead box, then you are dead. They are no more, they are an X-player character. So that's the basics. Then we have the character sheet. Everything fits on one page, which is lovely. There are quite a few options as far as abilities and flaws and weapons and all that kind of stuff, because the game has a pretty wide coverage, as you'll see if you watch Dave's review. So we won't get too much into that. But I do appreciate when a game can fit everything that you need on one sheet, basically. And you have your 3 states of fear: stable, which means you're fine; afraid; and terrified, which give you different penalties to your dice pool when you're rolling checks. You can mark your speed here. You can bank your luck dice. You can put your level here, which increases over time. Got spaces to put a character portrait. You've got 3 different armor slots, which can also grant you abilities, along with the armor protective qualities that I mentioned before. You got loads of potential for abilities. You can have a couple of weapons and some flaws as well. So this will come from your backgrounds that you choose during character creation. Then we have the Doom Clock. So this is what I mentioned before. It's drawn up as a series of a whole bunch of dots going in a circle, and each quarter point on the circle is marked with a special dot. When you mark that, then something will happen. So at quarter past, the power goes out, the darkness surrounding you, skill checks to investigate might be more difficult, for example. At half past, maybe the killer will bump off somebody important. At a quarter to, it's going to get more severe, so maybe your working escape vehicle has been sabotaged. And at midnight, then the big enemy now appears as a permanent threat and is stalking you, so you're really at kind of a critical point of the campaign. And they give you different ideas for Doom events, how they tick up, and ways to turn back the clock. So you can get, if you get double up symbols, you can turn the Doom clock back by 1 minute instead of banking them. Reaching story milestones can turn the clock back. It includes our items. Certain abilities can do it. So there's various ways to do that. And then you have advantage as well. So basically, if you have an advantage against your opponent, you'll get an extra die to roll. So a minor advantage gives you 1 extra die, and major advantage will give you an extra talent die, which gives you a significant raise in your possibility of getting successes. Then we have luck. So if you roll a luck symbol, you would then have a luck point, which is banked in your luck bank, which is on the character sheet, as we saw. And then you can spend luck points on a skill check to add an additional skill die to your dice pool on that roll. You can also save luck points for a later action or use them immediately on your next skill check, but only 1 luck point can be banked at a time. So if you roll luck and your luck bank is full, the luck point is lost. If you roll 2 luck symbols, you can choose not to bank them and use them as a single success on that skill check, or tick back the Doom clock by 1 minute. There we go. Then we have disadvantage, which is the exact reverse of advantage. So minor disadvantage, it takes away a skill die from you. Major disadvantage takes away a talent die. If you don't have a talent die, then instead you lose 2 skill die. So it's important to note. Then we have combat. So it's turn-based. There are different combat states you can be in. In the state to act first, you can be in the middle of the pack, and you're not leading the charge, you may be in the middle. If you're injured or at a disadvantage or slow, you'll often be last, and that's kind of your initiative order. Maybe some tips on combat, then how it breaks down, the different types of actions you can take in a turn, how damage, immunities, resistances, and weaknesses work. Overwhelm is something you can use against an enemy if you're able to gang up on them, but that doesn't work on giant and colossal enemies because they're too big. Makes sense. Then we have critical hits. So if you succeed in a skill check and striking an enemy with 2 more successes than their challenge rating. So enemies all have a challenge rating. Something simple like a zombie or a gremlin or whatever will have 1. So in that case, if you rolled 3 successes or more, you would get a critical hit. And then the damage that you will deal is doubled. And additionally, you can choose another effect based on whatever skill you were using. So if you were using grit, you knock them prone. If you're using wits, you can get a second strike, but that doesn't generate critical hits. If you're using smarts, you can nick a major artery. Basically, you had a very pinpoint strike, and they will gain the bleed condition. If you have used heart, then you'll get the steeled condition, which gives you more confidence. If you get luck, then you roll your luck pool, and if you roll some luck points, you'll get extra damage. Finally, if you're rolling strange, then terrifying forces radiate out from you and the damaged enemy becomes terrified. That's pretty cool. If you roll your dice pool and it contains 3 or more dice and every symbol is a success, this is known as a full house. This is rare but always amazing. The amount of damage you deal is tripled and the core skill effects also take place. So these effects up here. There's also an option for free flow combat. Then they talk about death. So there are different options for death. You can roll up a new character. You can remain in the game as a ghost. So you can't do anything sort of with the material world, but you can still hang around and help and aid your friends in a unique way. If you get killed by something like a vampire, a zombie, or a werewolf, you could come back as an enemy, and then they would be able to control that enemy and fight against their former friends. That'd be pretty cool. Or you could grab an NPC from the town or whatever place you're currently stalking in your adventure. Or it is possible to have resurrection, and there's always a hefty cost, however, and no matter what, you won't come back the same. Again, this is kind of modeled on the world of horror movies, so they talk about, what happens during a story of Shiver, and then if you're going to have a sequel to that, what's that going to look like? So, who died? What were the major moments? How did they change because of it? And these will be illustrated in different ways. Then we have some discussion of enemy reactions. So, some enemies can disrupt actions. There are advanced threats. Some have stealth abilities. There are stealth strikes, which are problematic. You can also hide or use stealth yourself. Then we get into character building stuff. So these are archetypes, each of which is tied to an attribute, except for the survivor, who is an all-rounder. So they have a broad skill set, but they lack speciality. So that's the downside. Now, then they talk about character levels. So the maximum character level you can reach is 15, and they give you a nice, fully worked out example of building a character and a checklist. So first you build your archetype, and then your background, then you choose your fear. It could be anything from thunderstorms to spooky clowns. And then discuss your fear with the director so they can weave it into the story. So then we have the basics for each archetype. So if you're a warrior, you obviously have good ratings in grit, 5 with 1 talent die. Everything else you have 3 and no talent die. Your tier 1 ability is tough, so you can soak up more damage. When hit by an attack, roll a skill die. For each grit symbol rolled, damage from the attack is reduced by 1. Very cool. Then there are different paths you can take within each archetype as well, and they will take you down, in turn, different pathways of gaining advancements in talents. So they give you tier 2 and tier 3 abilities, which we won't get into. Tier 4, tier 5, tier 6, tier 7, tier 8 plus, tier 9, tier 10. And then here's an example of the warrior's tree. So you've got 3 different pathways. You start with tough, and you can go down the berserker route, the fighter route, or the protector route, and these will give you access to different enhancements. And at certain points, like at tier 5, you'll gain +2 core skill points to a skill of your choice. At tier 8, you'll gain +1 grit talent points. So you do have opportunities to increase your attributes as well. And then we have the Maverick. He is choosing wit as his primary area of skill, so he starts with 5 skill dice and 1 talent die. And there's 3 different paths: the thief, assassin, and the ranger. His tier 1 ability is dodge, so if you're targeted by a strike and you've not used your interact action, you can roll a single skill die. If you roll a wit symbol, you dodge and the strike automatically fails. But if you roll any other symbol, it doesn't help you. There are many different other abilities going up to tier 10, and we have the Maverick tree. And so we see, similarly, we have tier 5 and tier 8, we have some attribute increases, but then we have these talents that you can choose from along these 3 different pathways. And obviously, Assassin is going to be focusing on killing people. Thief will be, being sneaky and grabbing stuff. And the Ranger will be more navigation, maybe, range combat, etc. Then we have the Scholar. So here you're using your smarts. You start with smarts 5 and 1 talent point. Like the other archetypes, you'll note all of them have this deficiency here. So you need to choose 1 core skill and remove 1 core skill point to move from 3 to 2. And it cannot be the skill that is your core one for the archetype. So their tier 1 ability is Medic. You can stitch your friends up and keep them alive. Roll a CR1 smarts check. If successful, you heal an ally or yourself for 2 wounds. Every smart symbol in excess of 1 that you roll yields an additional 1 wound. Excellent. Then you have Scholar paths: Healer, Academic, and Engineer. And many abilities for those. And we have our tree here. Wow, so there's some kind of monster transformation you can go through. That's pretty cool. Then we have the socialite, so they are focused on heart, which is the social attribute for this game. And of course they have their deficiency, as does the others. They've got a 5 in heart and a 1 talent point, 3 in everything else, and then 1 will have to go down to 2. Tier 1 ability is snap out of it. You can re-roll any heart symbols rolled for fear checks that you make. And you may also roll a CR1 heart check to lower an ally's fear status by 1. Socialite paths, you have the Charmer, the Companion, and the Provoker. So that's pretty interesting. You can be silver-tongued, you can be a great friend, sidekick, you could be somebody who winds other people up. That's pretty cool. We have all their skills and paths, and then we have their tree. Again, I love that, we've got a clear color theme with everything. Everything ties together with the symbols and the dice, but there's also subpaths that allow you a lot of customization opportunities. So for the Fool, this is the guy who relies on luck. Basically, he doesn't have a lot of skills, but he sort of stumbles his way through. That's by just having a lot of luck. His tier 1 ability is banking on it, so you forego using your luckiness and bide your time, gathering up all that positive probability. You can now bank up to 3 luck points at a time in your luck bank. Well, that's pretty good. And you get Fool Paths, the accumulator, so you hold on to your good fortune to release it at just the right moment to change the course of things. The Last Chancer, so you manage to turn the tables on others even when the odds seem against you, so you drain luck from others, basically. The Blessed Path, someone or something out there is looking out for you, so even a hunch can turn out to be a revelation on this path. Interesting. And we have tons of abilities, and they're a lovely green tree. I love that there's a character based on just being foolish and lucky. That's very cool to me. And very appropriate to the genre, I have to say, as well. Then we have the Weird. So these are your, 11 in Stranger Things, your wizard archetypes, and your mythos investigators types you can see here. Now there are 4 paths here. We have the Eldritch Path, which is the Lovecraftian path, I assume. Spiritualist path, so this is using the spirit realm to create illusions and commune with the dead. The Psionic path, so you can have telekinesis, read thoughts, and basically use the power of your mind to cause havoc. And Body Horror, so you can transform your body into a living weapon, including fully morphing into a dangerous creature. So they have, obviously, Strange at 5 with 1 talent point. And their Tier 1 ability is, they don't have a single Tier 1 ability. It's determined by the path you choose. So Eldritch Path gives you Madness. Use this as an attack action on a target enemy. And you have an opposed skill check of Strange versus their smarts. If they fail, roll a skill die, and that will determine what action they will take. If they get a grit or wit, they'll attack another enemy. Smarts or heart, they'll move away from you. Luck or Strange, they'll attack themselves. And when you use this ability successfully, the Doom Clock will tick up by 2 minutes. Well, that is cool, though. If you're a Spiritualist, your level 1 ability is Illusionist. You can create a small visual illusion. Each illusion ticks up the Doom Clock by 1 minute. If you want to make a more complex illusion, describe to the director what you wish to do, and they will determine a CR for your skill check. Psionic Path, you will get Telekinesis. So the size of the object will determine the CR of the Strange check required to move it, and that will tick up the Doom Clock by 1 minute each time you use it successfully. And you can use an attack action to use telekinesis on large or smaller enemies, rolling Strange versus Grit. If you're successful, you can move them or throw them any direction, 30 feet, dealing falling damage for the distance thrown, so that'd be 3 blunt damage. Tick up the Doom Clock by 2 minutes. Then you also have the Body Horror Path, finally. You'll get Claws. You can morph your hands into deadly weapons, and using your claws, your unarmed strikes now use Strange as their core skill, and deal 3 pierce damage. If you want to conceal your claws from others when attacking, you must succeed in a CR1 wit check or fight in a way which hides them. Each successful strike using your claws will tick up the Doom Clock by 1 minute. So really powerful stuff, but the Doom Clock's going to go up real fast when using one of these guys. But there's lots of cool abilities. We've got Mirages, Astral Forms, Telepathy, Peculiar Artifacts, Ungodly Rituals, all kinds of cool stuff here. And it goes on for quite a bit, given the 4 paths. Bullet Time, that's nice. And then we have the Weird Tree with its 4 different paths here. Very, very cool. So you can see that, we've got a lot of coverage of key archetypes in horror films and series. And we got the Survivor, so this guy is all about versatility. He begins with +1 talent point and +1 core skill point in 2 different core skills of your choosing. But then you must choose 2 different core skills and remove 1 core skill point from those. So you have a greater deficiency than normal, but you have flexibility in how you place your strengths. That's the flip side of it. For your Tier 1 ability, you have Deus Ex Machina, so you rewrite your fate. You may choose to reroll any skill check and add an additional skill die to your dice pool when doing so. Then you have 3 paths. You can be the chosen or the leader. You can be a survivalist, or you can be the cockroach. So you just stay alive in any way you possibly can. You're like the cockroach after a nuclear war, the last one still standing. We got loads of abilities. So initially you have 3 paths, and then they split into further paths, and then come back together, and then split again. Interesting. So definitely looking forward to getting deeper into this system, but it seems really easy to get started. You know, we've got one ability per character, not a lot of numbers to keep track of, and some funky dice to roll, which I always personally enjoy. You can also do hybrid archetypes, so you can combine archetypes together. There are rules and restrictions for that. And then we have some flaws. So if you hybridize into another archetype, you will have to choose a unique fatal flaw. So as a random example, let's say painful memory, something in your past looms over you that you can't shake, and these scary situations you find yourself in don't help. When you fail a fear check, you take 1 soul damage. In combat, for every combat round you remain afraid or terrified, you take another 1 soul damage. So you can hybridize and gain the benefits of multiple archetypes, but you will then have a pretty nasty flaw to deal with. Then we have your backgrounds. You can combine these with any archetype. So you could be a smart warrior, you could be an eldritch maverick, or whatever you want. So the archetypes, they will give you additional abilities and a flaw. So we've got all kinds of stuff: drifters, operatives, scientists, surgeons, nerds. That'll be me then. Hackers, tinkerers, actors, cheerleaders, con men, priests, lawyers, harbinger, the janitor, the stoner. That's a good one. Conspiracist, the regular, the experiment, the possessed, the cursed, the abducted, the android. That's a good one. Tactician, sheriff, the new kid, khaki scout, and the final girl. Excellent. That's a classic slasher movie trope, isn't it? Then we have earth, wind, and fire powers. So these are 6 powers in total to choose from, each representing the core skill that is rolled to use it. You may choose one of the following: Earth Spike, Pyrokinesis, Windwalker, Regenerate, Lightning Arc, or Decay. Alright. Then we have how fear works. So when you encounter something bad, you might have to make a fear check. If you're stable, you're basically fine. If you're afraid, you lose 1 core skill point from every core skill to a minimum of 1 until you're no longer afraid. If you're terrified, you lose 2 core skill points until the effect of terrified is broken. And you will get terrified when you fail a fear check while you're already afraid. And we talk about how to break free of fear. So if you escape the threat or vanquish the threat, you can escape, or you can try to stabilize yourself with a strange check with a challenge rating, which will vary based on the situation, or if opposed by an enemy, must roll more successes than the enemy. If this is successful, it moves your fear status to the previous state. So you can go from terrified to afraid, and then you can do it again on your next turn to go from afraid to stable. So you're more actively able to manipulate your level of fear, unlike in things like Call of Cthulhu, where once you fail a sanity check by a certain amount, you basically lose your agency entirely, which I like. It raises the stakes, but this is a different kind of game. It's more about cinematic fear and horror than sort of the cosmic horror and doom approach of Call of Cthulhu. Then choosing your fear, they give you some hot tips on that, and then we have the directors section. So here we have setting things up, involving the players, building an atmosphere, how to build a story, thinking about your scale, your play length, the characters, what's known and unknown, setting the scene, how to map your story. So they think about stories in the 3-act structure that you would typically get in a film or something like that. And if you're thinking of that structure, then you can think about sequels for your follow-ups. How to expand your world, how to make good NPCs, non-player characters, managing difficulty. This is a good one. So since players can end up to level 1 to 15, then you'll need to think about what kind of challenges you're going to face to appropriately increase the stakes as you move along through the adventures as the characters get more powerful. Then creating a sanctuary. Sanctuaries should be safe places that players can resupply and rest and get resources. Talk about playing with miniatures, using environments and maps. Then core rules. Reading the knuckle bones, managing combat, and including in free flow mode, directing and engaging combat. So make sure to use the environment, make it matter to the story, be creative with the enemies and their actions, etc. Maintaining the mystery, so don't reveal what enemy names are, don't give out information too easily, and use a screen, which luckily I bought, of course. How to reward players. Give them advantage die, doom clock reductions, weapons and loot and stuff, or level ups. And that's largely driven by story. Then we have luck and how to use it, the doom clock and how to manage its effects, designing doom events with some great examples, handling character death, including being haunted. Then we got the toolbox. So this allows you to build stuff. So here we have some ways to build weapons. So with different ranges, levels, level of the weapon, the damage on a successful hit, range. And they give melee examples, range examples, and thrown examples. Very useful. The core skill types for different weapons, types of damage. So you can have things like blunt damage, cold, corrosive, burning, pierce, poison, sharp, shock, and soul, which doesn't trigger armor. It can also lower an enemy's challenge rating. So that's useful against stronger enemies. Oh, that's cool. Then you have materials and creature sensitivities. You know, certain things like werewolves are vulnerable to stuff like silver, so you'll need to think about materials when you're thinking about what your weapons are made of. And then they have an armory, so all kinds of cool melee weapons. Baseball bat, for example, gives you 2 blunt damage and is usable within 5 feet. Baseball bat with spikes in it, that'll give you 4 blunt damage. Bionic arms, crowbars, cudgels, of course a chainsaw, 6 sharp damage within close range, but it has fuel. So each strike uses 1 fuel, and when you get run out of your 10 fuel, then you need to either refuel it or chuck it to the side. You've got holy relics, which do soul damage, and if an enemy is targeted by it, they must make a CR1 heart check, and if they fail, they must use their next move action to move their full move distance away from the bearer. And this weapon is holy, so that's important when you think about what kind of enemies you're up against. Improvised weaponry, laser swords. If you want lightsabers, sledgehammers, spears, stakes, there's one in the skull there, stun batons, crossbows, swords, torches, blunderbusses, dart throwers, Zweihanders even, flintlock rifles, Gauss cannons, harpoon guns, heavy machine guns. So I wonder, let's see, a heavy machine gun, 4 pierce and long range. Using this weapon uses both an attack and an interact action, so it needs your whole turn basically. You need 2 hands to use it. Spray and pray. Enemies within 5 feet of the initial target must make a luck check of CR1. If they fail, they are also hit. Oh, that's cool. So that's how kind of automatic weapons are handled. Very simple and makes sense. Longbows, got mine launchers, plasma welders. There's just a huge amount of different weapons in here. Shotguns, sawed-off, spore launchers, wizard staff. Wow. Traps and thrown weapons, so caltrops, cryo grenades, hunter snares, Molotov cocktails, oil flasks, smoke bombs, Doombringer legendary weapon, the Helsing, energy blade, 6 fire damage. Wow. Necronomicon, excellent, 5 soul damage, and it's also terrifying. When hit with a successful strike, the enemy must make a CR2 strange check or become afraid. Cool. So you can attack people with the Necronomicon in this game. You've got different types of armor, from battle armor to bomb disposal suits, hazmat suits, diving suits, knight's armor, jetpacks, mining helmets, psychic amplifiers, stealth suits, symbiotic entities, juggernauts. We've got special items, cracked mirrors, amulet of Osiris, okay, energy drinks, holy pendants, holy books. Demonic enemies have major disadvantage when striking you if you have a holy book, by the way. That's helpful. Liquor, medicine, medkits, mysterious cameras, rosary beads, spectral board, so a Ouija board, voodoo dolls, and then some tips on creating enemies. Who, what, where, why. What type of enemy are they? Where do they come from? Why are they doing what they're doing? Then you think about their challenge rating, their death con level, and enemy reactions. So here's an example of an enemy. We have a bruiser. They have different reactions based on what they roll, it seems like. So when an enemy is hit, the director rolls a single skill die to determine what happens. Enemies have more reaction depending on their death con level. Death con amber enemies only react when grit is rolled. Oh, that's cool. So basically there's a random possibility that depending on how beat up your enemy is, they may roll a die when they take damage and have some kind of reaction, which could be something like a savage strike or a monstrous regeneration, which heals wounds. And we have different tables for different types of enemies, like Dracula, scary enemies, agile enemies, intelligent enemies. Design their health point size and speed, their attacks, any special abilities, disrupt actions, resistances, immunities, and weaknesses, the image, so what they look like. Then we got a bestiary, fantastic. So we've got the average Joe, regular guy, doesn't do much. And we have slashers, so we've got the hangman, just as an example, he's got, 8 dice in grit. Then he has the maim ability, he can do bloody as well for 4 sharp damage, cause bleed. Got a nasty noose, which uses wits, and if the target fails a wit check of CR2, then a noose wraps around their neck and they are yanked 25 feet towards the hangman and are grappled. They also have an off-screen teleporter. So if all characters lose sight of the creature, then the enemy can teleport to a new location in true slasher movie fashion. Oh, I love that. They also have Executioner. When this enemy kills or sends a character to death's doors, they gain a free attack, interact, or move action on their combat turn. Very cool. Very solid slashers. We've got the mascot, the nurse, the phantom. We've got shapeshifters, the dryad, kitsune, fox shapeshifters of Japanese legend, werewolves, of course. We've got bites, howls, and claw attacks, and the leap ability. We've got dark magic creatures, witch, occultist, warlocks, demonic enemies, hellhounds, imps, the fallen ones. These are fallen angels. And we've got fiends, who have lots of abilities and can fly. Cosmic horrors, we got fishmen, fishmen hybrids, Dagon spawn, Dagon itself, which I don't think you'd want to deal with. Eldritch entities, we've got abominations, night gaunts, shoggoths. This is all public domain Lovecraft stuff. We've got spirits, ghosts, banshees, and poltergeists, which have different abilities, including being spectral. Ghosts can't be seen unless they reveal themselves, and they can pass through walls. They're immune to all physical attacks. Cool. Then we have aliens. So we've got creepily tall people, gray aliens, gray seers, who have some psychic powers as well. We've got vampires. We've got the drained. We've got the vampires themselves, and ancient vampires. So they can use interact action to change to a bat, swarm, or wolf. We've got animals, natural threats, bats, rats, bears, dogs. Then we've got zombies. We've got the Shambler zombie, Sprinter zombie, and the Corpse Titan, which is like a mega zombie. Basically, bodies have melded together in a mass grave into one big blob. Then we have infections and how that works. So tracking infection, basically players can be infected in different ways. They can be infected with vampirism, which progresses in several stages, with stage 4 being embraced. So a reference to Vampire the Masquerade there. Become a fully fledged bloodsucker, and you're now acting as a vampire. Become a vampire and act that way, potentially against your party, which is pretty cool. Lycanthropy, of course, is werewolf infection. There are cures for these as well. You can be infected with parasites, the Z virus, which is the zombie virus. Then we got vehicles as well, which have abilities, attacks, and hit points, and move distance are substantially larger than for characters. We've got cargo walkers, if you want to do aliens, fishing boats, horses, space shuttles, wow. And then we have, this is a basic scenario to get you started. So some character ideas, Doom event ideas, the basic story, tactical difficulties, tooling up, some enemies to face. Again, I'm just flipping through so as not to spoil anything. Nice that they have an intro adventure in here to give you an idea of how a Shiver game is supposed to go. There's maps as well, which are very readable and clean. Summary of all the status effects, glossary of terms, and your index. So really nice put together book. And it is 224 pages in total. So that's your Shiver core rulebook. Now we'll look at Gothic. So this one here. So Gothic is, as I mentioned, it's an expansion to the base game. It's much thicker. I think it's about 320 pages, and this book is about expanding your game to allow playing monstrous characters, but also it has a sizable campaign in and of itself, which takes place in the city-state of Spireholm, which is all mapped out here on the end papers. Gives you keys to the different districts and location keys, which I presume will be described in the volume itself. We're going to go through this with some speed, so we'll look through mainly the player's guide, and the Secrets of Spireholm is a 10-part campaign, which carries on from page 80 onward, so we'll just sort of skim through that extremely quickly so as not to spoil anything. I noticed the font choices and the layout is a little bit different, as well as having our different symbols here. So yes, that was heart, that is luck. So the symbols are slightly different. And they give you some description of the inspiration for the setting. Then playing as monsters. So how to go about doing that. We have different types of monsters. So constructs. These are things like robots, Frankenstein's monsters, and golems. And there are different construct paths. Flesh-based, machine-based, or stone-based, which is your golems. And these are very cool. With tier 1, you start with synthetic sentience. Your body is hardy and acts as armor. You add one piece of armor named constructed body that can never be destroyed or removed, but can be healed as you would a wound on your lifeline, or be repaired through abilities and ingenious roleplay. Cool. Then we got loads more abilities for them. Then we have their construct table here. So it seems they merge after tier 8 back into the central stone path here. Then we have the change. So these are your shifters. The beast. So this is the lycanthropes and werewolves, basically. And then you have the obscured. These are invisible or unseen phantasmal types. And along these two paths, you have different tier 1 abilities. So tier 1 for the beast, you can change into a beast. However you look is up to you. Could be a werewolf or could be something else entirely, alligator or whatever. You choose 2 options from the mutagen list on page 22 in any combination. Use an interact action to transform. You can't use weapons while in bestial form, only the strength given to you by your unique and deadly gifts. Alright, so if we go through this, we'll see the tier abilities, and then we got the mutagens. So these are the different things you can have on your beast form. Extendable claws, a strengthened jaw, prehensile tail, carapace shield, spines, Winter hide, venom sacs, nice. Expanded musculature and wing flaps, cool. So I'm presuming that as you go through your path as well, you'll be able to enhance some of these aspects. Also eagle eyes, hunter eyes, net gills, or webbed hands and feet as are other possible mutagens. That's very cool. Then we have the Mad Genius. So this is your Dr. Frankenstein or Jekyll and Hyde types. And you have two paths here. The Creator, so you're building and tweaking mad science type stuff. The Alchemist, you're a master of chemical alteration. So you're constantly mixing and brewing potions and tinctures. Your tier 1 ability is to create a minion. Choose either automaton or homunculus. Your minion is treated as a character you control with the following differences. An automaton cannot be healed but can be repaired. If it's reduced to 0 HP, it is broken and can still be repaired. A homunculus will aid his master in alchemical endeavors, and when conducting experiments or using arcane science or alchemy near your homunculus, you gain minor advantage. Interesting. So then we have, of course, lots of different Mad Genius abilities for different paths, and then we have the stats for the homunculus and the automaton. So it looks like the automaton has the ability to whiz at a target with force and knock them prone, as well as an electric prod, and it's repairable. The homunculus, however, it has the ability to spew toxic vomit, which is corrosive, and a quick bash with its fists, and has the ability of horrible helper. So much conducting experiments, you give the advantage to your character. So the basic main choice here is whether you want to have a helper for your experiments or whether you want a repairable minion that can stick around with you. And we got a Mad Genius tree as well after your utility tier 10 abilities. Then we have the Immortal, so your vampires and cursed warriors. So we've got two paths here, the Endless. So there are mortal beings that are so for various reasons, and the Vampire, which is, of course, the classic blood drinkers. Tier 1 ability for all paths is Live Long, Die Hard. Killing you a second time is difficult. When you reach 0 HP, you don't die, you become unconscious. After 3 combat rounds or once combat ends, you resurrect yourself with 1 HP. The only way to kill you is to fully remove your head or cast a stake through your heart. You shy away from the light and stick to the shadows during the day. If exposed to daylight, you become weakened. Prolonged exposure may cause fire damage at the director's discretion. You also gain weakness to silver, and that applies to both immortal paths. Cool. So then we got more tier abilities as we go up through levels and your advancement chart. So they pretty well split after level 6 and stay quite separated there. Then we have the Lucky Devil, Gremlins, Faustian Fools, and Dark Patrons. Cool, so this is the monster variation of the Fool archetype, basically. So we've got the Damned, so you've got dark gifts offered by Grim Patrons. It's a lost cause choosing to draw from a dark well of power. The price, shards of your soul. Then you have the Faustian, so you made a deal, but it comes at a price. When you die, your soul is hellbound. So you wield the flames of hell at your fingers. You can conjure flames and then summon the minions of hell to aid you. Wow, very cool. Tier 1 ability for the Damned path is Soul Gambler. House always wins. Your soul is the only chip you have left to gamble. When you would take damage, roll a luck check of CR2. If successful, you take no wounds. If failed, you only take 1 wound. You may only heal wounds with abilities from the Damned path. When you level up, heal 4 wounds. Wow. The Faustian path, you have Fortuitous Fiend. Fortune smiles upon you because you owe a debt, not because you're lucky. A dark lender is pulling the strings, keeping you going until it's time to pay up in full. You can now bank 3 luck points instead of 1. The odds in tune with your demonic favor. Cool. I'm really interested to see, I don't have the time now to go through all of these. Don't want to waste your time either, but there's clearly some interesting abilities down these two paths. In particular, I'm interested in the Faustian's demon and hell-based abilities. I was a fan of that. Then we have the Oddly Undead for the Strange archetype. So we have the Wraith path. You're dead as a doornail, but still partially anchored to the living world. So we have the Wraith path. You're dead as a doornail, but still partially anchored to the living world. So a bit of a sort of nod there to Wraith the Oblivion from the World of Darkness. The Revenant, so you're an animated bag of bones or ectoplasmic mass. Or you could be the Reaper, a hooded figure approaching with scythe in hand. This path opens up access to a scythe weapon perfect for reaping souls and dealing large amounts of damage in service of death themselves. Ooh, so you're like a minor Reaper. That's awesome. So, Tier 1 ability for all paths is the Restless Undead. Choose ethereal or skeletal. You do not need to eat, sleep, or breathe. If you're ethereal, you still have some physical qualities but are very malleable, like a spectral putty. You can move through a space as narrow as 2 inches wide without squeezing, or fit inside a container large enough to contain an enemy of small size. You're also resistant to blunt, pierce, and sharp damage, but weak to soul damage. Skeletal characters gain the Play Dead ability and are immune to bleeding and blinding conditions. Excellent. All these monster archetypes seem like a lot of fun. So then we have a bunch of cool abilities, of course, and the tree of abilities for each of the 3 different paths. Very nice. Then we got the Slayer, which is the multifaceted archetype equivalent on the monstrous side. You have the Weapon Master path, so you're gifted with martial prowess and the resolve to go toe-to-toe with any monster in your way. And you have the Archivist, so you're not a stuffy librarian, but you have centuries of collective knowledge that you weaponize against your monstrous enemies to deadly effect. Your tier 1 ability in either case is Monster Slayer. When you make a strike against certain enemy groups, you may strike again without using an action. These enemy groups include vampires, cryptids, spirits, undead, and any other type the director deems a monster in the context of the story. Cool, so you are a Slayer like Buffy. Watch out for bad guys, demons of all types. And then we have some Slayer weapons. Slayer's Whip, Slayer's Bow, and Slayer's Blade. Very cool. And again, they use the star motif, the success symbol not tied to any specific attribute. Then we have Gothic backgrounds. So we got Holy Knight, Sentient Machines, Creation, the Regal Beast, the Were Creature, the Coach Driver, Taxidermist, Plague Doctors, Envoys, Grave Robbers, the Person in the Portrait, so a Dorian Gray type thing, the Gourmet, the Village Idiot, the Pathetic Protege, and the Gambler, the Vengeful Spirit, the Magician, the Fortune Teller, and there's an item here, the Crystal Ball, you can use for divination. The Monster Hunter, Local Hero, and Night Watchman are backgrounds tied to the Slayer archetype. Then we have the Secrets of Spirehome. This section of the book is split into a number of sections to help directors navigate Spirehome and the stories within it. Right, so we'll just very quickly flip through. We'll see there's lots of background about life in Spirehome, the factions, the districts, places you can go, the city center, the Divine District, the docks, the watch headquarters, Cemetery Row. Then we got world locations. We got the map again. What could the players be doing? Present day Spirehome. And Doom Calendar, which is a new mechanic added to this. So this is on top of having the Doom Clock. You've got a Doom Calendar as well. So there's Doom Tolls. You can turn back the Doom Calendar, however. And then we have the actual chapter. So this is really where I don't want to spoil anything. So we'll just quickly flip through. You'll see, as with the Starter Adventure, the other book, we've got great, nicely illustrated, read aloud text. And layout is very clear. You've got nice big stat blocks for all the monsters, sample Doom Clock events, interludes where you can, build up your characters, resupply, get resources. We've got all kinds of cool enemies, which are not laid out in the core rulebook. There's some new stuff in here. Monstrous deals on Strange Tides. Oops. Alright, some more weapons, stuff, loot that you can find. We've got chases, we've got crashes, we've got vampire lore, we've got spectral stuff, NPCs, things happening at the docks, the ships, the web tunnels with spiders in it, yuck. Mysterious visitors, creepy crawlies, the Drake, interesting, Spider and the Samurai. We've got a haunted house, which looks very scary. Guests, staff in the haunted house. Then we've got mysteries, and looks like a murder mystery of some kind. We have some secrets, resolving the mysteries, the map of the house on Harrowed Hill. Quarantine, that's interesting. So escaping from some kind of quarantine situation, I guess. We've got some more loot there. Roaming monsters. And some more chasing. Some other interesting stat blocks. More vampire stuff. Reapers. Wow, there's just a ton of content here. I mean, you could get a lot of sessions of play out of this, that much is clear. So I'll just skip through a bit more rapidly here. You can see, I mean, this is really a massive campaign. I think you'll get a number of sessions out of this. Each individual chapter has a lot of things to check out, a lot of NPCs. It's got new monsters, loot, mysteries, and you've got maps for places. So yeah, this is a serious bit of excitement, I think, if you want to embark on a campaign in Spirehome. And there is a adventure follow-up as well to this, which is about the Dregs, which is a new area underneath the city of Spirehome. So I don't have that yet. I do hope to get it at some point when it restocks at my favorite stores. And I should mention, by the way, that currently Parable Games is doing a Kickstarter for 2 new books for Shiver, which are basically heading down the X-Files and Delta Green kind of route. So you have one book on how to play characters that are involved in some sort of conspiracy or something like that. And the second book will be adventures and stuff related to that, I imagine. Or that seems to be. And the group that is mentioned is called Lance in the context of that campaign. So then we have the Cursed Library. This, once again, is all adventures. So I'm going to be very quick here with this one. We have just a collection of terrifying tales. So we'll look at the basic setup for each one, and then we'll just skip past the actual content. So we've got The Lost Ship, All Hallows Eve, Dark Prospects, Protocol, and Mr. Husk, totaling up a little over 120 pages. Ooh, wow, book is making interesting noises. So let's see, welcome to the library. Okay, tools not rules, keeping players on track, yada yada. Okay, The Lost Ship. Okay, so length of play 3 to 6 hours, numbers of players 3 to 6, subgenre sci-fi, body horror, cosmic horror, film rating 15, body horror, animal experimentation warnings, recommended ability level 4 to 6. And so if you want to get an idea, watch The Thing, The Void, or Event Horizon. Oh, cool. It's nice that they give you inspirational media for each individual adventure. That's pretty cool. There's, each adventure, again, is substantial. I mean, there's a number of different scenes here, building up to an epilogue, Doom Clock events, some items, maps. So next we have All Hallows Eve, again, 3 to 6 hours, 3 to 6 players, subgenre kids on bikes, haunted house, and supernatural. Film age rating 15, content warning, body horror, violence towards children, recommended ability level 4 to 6. Watch Stranger Things, People Under the Stairs, and The Haunting. Cool, so it gives you a good idea what kind of story you're looking at here. Bit Stranger Things vibes, haunted house vibes, and the kids facing dire threats, basically. Again, we've got some cool maps here. Then we have Dark Prospects, 3 to 6 hours again, 3 to 6 players. Subgenre Weird West, Dungeon Crawl, and Supernatural. Okay, so content warning, claustrophobia, violence towards animals, and colonial themes. Again, levels 4 to 6. Watch list The Blob, Bone Tomahawk, or The Descent. Ooh, getting more obscure now. Don't know all of these movies. But I do love Weird West, so that's very cool that that's covered in this book. Big fan of Deadlands back since the 90s. We have something called an ooze miner. That always sounds good. Weird West weaponry as well. We've got mines. And we have Protocol, which seems to be a space-based mission here. 4 to 8 hours, 3 to 6 players. Sci-fi, thriller, and alien are the subgenre. Film age rating 15. Content warning, claustrophobia, violence towards animals. Levels 5 to 8 are recommended instead of 4 to 6. Watch list, Alien, Event Horizon, and Starship Troopers. Ooh, love all those movies. Excellent. So this is your space, alien, horror, disaster, bonanza. Very into that. And then we've got different decks of the ship, things happening in different parts of the ship, and the engine room, all this kind of stuff. But by the way, if you buy these books at your friendly local game store as well, they do, Parable Games does use the bits and mortar scheme, so you will get PDFs for free with your purchase, which I have done with these books. So yeah, and we have a nice sort of 80s style pixelated map of the ship and key locations. Finally, we have Mr. Husk. So this is 2 to 5 hours, 2 to 6 players, slasher and supernatural, age rating 15, content, claustrophobia, violence towards animals, experience level 4, watch list, Children of the Corn, and scary stories to tell in the dark. Interesting. So this is more, I don't know, maybe like Fear Street kind of level. So there'll be scary slashers and things happening, but it's a quite short chapter, so just a quick one for a couple of hours. So that's the Cursed Library, 5 adventures with a decent amount of heft. I mean, nothing like what's in Spire Home there, but still pretty nice for the price, I have to say. Then finally, we'll look at the director's screen. So this came originally wrapped in shrink wrap, which I've removed, so you don't have to hear all the crinkly noises. You can see on the back here it says, this screen provides you with a great set of tools to run a fun and frightening game of Shiver. Well, they misspelled frightening, come on. Plot your diabolical schemes behind your screen with a variety of information, handy tables, and references to help your game go smoothly. There's also an inbuilt Doom tracker for you and your players to have a constant reminder of the potential perils you face as you delve deeper into the dark. Alright, so on the outside, we'll see what we have. Alright, so we've got the Eldritch Dude, who we saw in the core rulebook. And then we have the strange and various other symbols on one side, and the other remaining dice symbols on the other side, along with some miscellaneous weaponry. That's pretty cool. You can see it's quite compact, this screen. I would say it's a little bit thinner than some other screens, but it does have a decent hardcover stock feel to it. So on the first page here, on the leftmost page, we've got the core skills: grit, wit, smarts, heart, luck, and strange, what they do, combat encounters and how they work, critical hits and how they work. In the middle, we've got status effects, so things like being afraid, bleed, burning, maimed, prone, poisoned, etc., terrified. And then we have Doom Tracker running along the top here, so I guess the idea is you could use a paperclip to sort of track it along as you tick up the Doom Tracker. I would prefer to just print out the sheet and keep it behind the screen. But I guess you could build some suspense for your players if you have the paperclip moving across. They won't know what the number actually is in either case, but they'll get a sense that it's getting high. And then we have some basic reaction tables for intelligent, scary, agile, and bruiser monsters. So yeah, pretty much what you need to run a basic session of Shiver. So not bad at all. For 13 quid, that's what that cost me. So that's just a very quick look at what we get here for initial investment into Shiver. I am looking to get the 2 new books, as I mentioned, which are called Slasher Generation Murder and Blockbuster, which I think is Legend of the Silver Scream is the subtitle for that one. Those new rules for generational kind of sequels in the Slasher case and, sort of metagame actor careers in the Blockbuster case sound pretty cool to me. There are also 2 starter sets, one associated with each of those books, that are coming out fairly soon. I'm not sure exactly when, but it will be soon. And they will contain pre-generated characters, a starter rulebook with everything you need, and a set of dice as well. I think you only get 3 talent dice instead of the 4 in these packs, but that's enough for most use cases anyway. They cost about £40 retail. I'm waiting for them to come out at my usual haunts so that I can get a few quid off, and they're not out there yet, I think, for the general public. Maybe the Kickstarter backers will have them. But do check those starter sets out if you're looking to just get a peek at the game with, some funky dice included. And that'll make things easier if you then pick up the core rulebook and don't want to buy more dice. The other thing is that the 2 dice packs are actually different. The Archetype dice and the monster dice, they have different symbols. So, it's not a difference in actual functionality. If you know what these symbols mean, you can, map them to these 1-to-1 basically. But it is cool to have the different, more monstery looking dice with different symbols as well. So my first impressions are, I think the quality of the books is great. They're case-bound hardbacks. They've all got ribbons. I don't believe they're stitch-bound. I think they're glue-bound, but nicely put together. All of them seem really solid and sturdy. The director's screen is a bit small, but the game is not that complicated as far as mechanics go. So it does have the key stuff that you need, and having the Doom Tracker on the top edge is kind of a unique touch as well, so I do like that. So my recommendation would be, if you think replicating horror cinema is up your street, this might be an interesting game for you to look at. And make sure you get the core rulebook first of all, because Gothic does not replicate that. It is, as you saw, about 2/3 of it is a gigantic campaign, and a lot of the information will be for the director only. Well, yeah, so very positive first impressions. Very much look forward to playing it. Basically, I'm just waiting for word on when the 2 new books will be on Bits and Mortar, and I'll order them straight away from my friendly local game store, and then I will put those up for a quick preview as well. When the starter sets come out, then I'll make sure to show you those when they come in stock. I think it's an exciting game system. I'm a big fan of funky dice. I know not everybody is. I find them loads of fun. They're not that expensive, for, I think it was £13.70 or so. You get 10 skill dice and 4 talent dice. That's pretty much all you need. You can share them around the whole table, and then you're pretty much fine. Same for the monster characters. This 1 dice set is enough for basically anyone until they get to really high levels. They seem to be widely available, so I don't consider it a big issue. It's harder for things like Genesis, where finding those dice physically is very difficult, but there are very nice online dice rollers. And here they have an online dice roller provided by the publisher for free. You can put all your characters' stats on there from the webpage. It's very simple to use. So yeah, that's my first impressions of Shiver. Hope you enjoyed. Happy Halloween. We will carry on spooky season until November, maybe even December, as I gain more strength back and I'm able to get all my editing done. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. Hope you have a happy Halloween, and I hope that you will click like and subscribe and click the bell and all that sort of stuff to help my channel grow. I'm really getting closer and closer slowly to 1,000 subscribers, which is my goal for the moment, so any help there would be appreciated. In the meantime, if you do want to support what I'm doing for this channel, which is mainly buying a lot of RPGs at great personal expense, then feel free to click the Ko-fi link down below and make a donation. I'd like to give a shout out to my first donator as well, which happened just recently. Thank you very much for that. You know, every little bit helps, so I really do appreciate that people have started to make little donations here and there. It does help me out. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you want deeper coverage of the game in the future, I'm happy to provide it, and I will, as I say, come back with the expansions as I'm able to fund them and get them into my possession. Until then, please have a great time. Take care of yourself. Go out there on Halloween night and scare some people. Have fun. Leave some comments down below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next spooky season video, even after spooky season is technically over. So until then, take care, be well, and see you all soon. All right, bye-bye.